the Poetry Center, bringing poetry to Paterson since 1980 at Passaic County Community College.
I want to thank, first of all, John Ming, who has been doing these videos of the poetry readings for 40 years, more than 40 years, and who has been invaluable. We also were born on the same day, many years apart, obviously. But he's been invaluable. He does these interviews with the poets, and then he posts the interviews on YouTube separately from the readings. So we have all these readings of wonderful poets over the years available on YouTube now, and that's all down to John. So I really want to thank him for that. I also want to thank my secretary, Smita Desai, who does so much work for the Poetry Center. She's out there now ready to sell the books and do anything that I asked her to do. So she's been a wonderful part of my staff for a long time. I also have to thank Sue Balick for all her help with running the various programs that I started, but I kind of dumped on her after 25, 30 years. I started peeling off some of the programs and giving them to her. I want to thank Lisa Nicolau, who helped me, who did restart the theater and poetry program here for me, and did such an amazing job of sending poets into the schools. And it had kind of faded, and then Lisa breathed life into him, and it's really thriving now. It's so wonderful. We actually started the theater programs again. After, of course, of COVID, we weren't allowed to have programs in the theater. So this year we started them again, thanks to Lisa Nicolau. Anyway, I also need to thank the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, Department of State, and National Endowment for the Arts, and the Poetry Center is located here at Passaic County Community College, and we've gotten so much assistance from the college and from the support of the president of the college, Dr. Stephen Rose, who helps us to have the buildings and moved us into this wonderful building. Isn't it amazing? And who's been so supportive of the Poetry Center, and I'm really grateful to him. I keep saying, please don't retire ever, because I don't know if I'd ever find a college president as supportive as Steve has been. So I want him to stay a long time. Let's see, who else am I missing? Oh yeah, I want to thank Sheldrake Lucas for providing the food free of charge, cooking it, getting it laid out, showing up here early on a Friday morning, a Saturday morning, to set it up and heat it up and put it out for us. And we're very grateful for that, because it makes it a little more like a party rather than our really pitiful cheese and crackers that we used to serve. Now, because of Sheldrake, he's such an amazing, and he is a wonderful opera singer. So if you ever get a chance to hear him sing opera, please go listen to him. He's wonderful. Let's clap for Sheldrake. Okay, so today I have the honor of presenting the Paterson Poetry Book Award winners and finalists, and I'm very thrilled about that. I'm so glad I got the idea to start that 40 years ago, I think, and it's been going on, it's been going strong, and it makes me feel really wonderful that it continues. And this year, we must have gotten 1,000 book submissions for the Paterson Poetry Prize. And then I give the books to the Paterson Public Schools. when I'm finished with them. Anyway, our first reader today, and one of the co-winners of the Paterson Poetry Book Prize, is Joshua Bennett. And he's a professor of literature and distinguished chair of humanities at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He's the author of 5 books of poetry, criticism, and narrative nonfiction. Spoken Word, A Cultural History from Nantes in 2023. The Study of Human Life, Penguin 2022, which won the Paterson Poetry Prize and was long-listed for the Grifton International Poetry Prize, and is currently being adapted for television in collaboration with Warner Brothers. Pretty good job. Pretty damn good. Ode from Penguin 2020, a finalist for the New England Book Award, being property once myself, Harvard University Press 2020, winner of the MLA's William Sanders Scarborough Prize, and the Sobbing School, Penguin 2016, winner of the National Poetry Series and finalist for an NAACP Image Award. He is the founding editor of Minor Notes, a Penguin classic book series dedicated to minor poets within the Black expressive tradition. He lives in Massachusetts with his family. Let's welcome Joshua Bennett.
That beautiful introduction. How are y'all doing? I've never given a reading sitting down. This will be.
Well, you're doing it in honor of me because I can't stand
No,
up
this is
anymore.
so fly. No,
So everybody has to sit down because Maria now is incapable of standing.
no, this is. I'm admiring the innovation and the form. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction and for saying good job on the TV show. I'm hoping it comes together beautifully. Are y'all all okay?
Yeah.
It was Odyssean labor getting here. My flight got pushed back 4 times because I think they were working on the runways after the earthquake yesterday. So thank you all for braving the elements to come here. I'm going to start where I usually end, with a poem called Benediction, in part because we're so close to my family in the place I grew up, which is Yonkers, New York. Before that, I lived in the Bronx for 5 years, and I went to a school called the Modern School, which is founded by a woman named Mildred Johnson, whose father and uncle wrote a song called Lift Every Voice and Sing, which for those, okay, this is great. I don't get this reaction at MIT when I say things like Lift Every Voice and Sing. So you all know it's the Black national anthem. And so until I was 5 or 6 years old, I'd never heard of the Star Spangled Banner. I'd never sang it because we sang Lift Every Voice and Sing together every day. So that's...
How wonderful.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. It was pretty sweet. And we, performed plays in French. And our teachers were incredible. And they had names like Miss Cherry, whose name reminds you of a cherry tree. And her skin was kind of the color of a cherry wood. And she was kind of mean to me, but she did love us, though, so this is a book written in love, and thank you all for the love you've shown it. This is Benediction. God bless the lightning bolt in my little brother's hair. God bless our neighborhood barber, the patience it takes to make a man you've just met beautiful. God bless every beautiful thing called monstrous since the dawn of a colonizer's time. God bless the arms of the mother on the crosstown bus. The sterling silver cross at the crux of her collarbone, its shine barely visible beneath her nightshade navy New York Yankees hoodie. God bless the baby boy kept precious in her embrace. His wail turning my entire row into an opera house. God bless the vulnerable ones. How they call us toward love and its infinite, unthinkable cost. God bless the floss, the flash, the brash and bare-knuckle brawl of the South Bronx girls who raised my mother to grease knuckles, cut eyes, get fly as any fugitive dream on the lam, on the run from the law, as any and all of us are who dare to wake and walk in this skin. And you best believe God bless this skin, the shimmer and slick of it, the wherewithal to bear the rage of brothers, sisters, soldiers slain and still function each morning, still sit at a desk, send an email, take an order, dream a world, some heaven big enough for black life to flourish, to grow. God bless the no. My story is not for sale. The no, this body belongs to me and the earth alone. The sea, the thing about souls is they by definition cannot be owned. God bless the beloved flesh our refusal calls home. God bless the unkillable interior. Bless the uprising. Bless the rebellion. Bless the overflow. God bless everything that survives the fire. All right. Thank y'all.
Amazing.
So I started with family, and I'm going to stay there. So this is a sonnet for my best friend Devin, who's been my best friend ever since our first day at Rye Country Day School in 2005, where I saw this, other black boy, one of the only ones in our sea of students, who had on a brown flight jacket and was just seemed very chill. We've been best friends ever since then. And part of what that means is every birthday he calls me and says, "Happy birthday, Al Roker." Does everyone know who Al Roker is? Fantastic. We're 2 for 2. Al Roker and I share a birthday, and I love that. I love that he still does it. I'm 35 now, so it's this 20-year tradition I have with my best friend, who is also a killer small forward, man. I remember this one game he dropped 25 on Hamden Hall on pretty strong efficiency, and being his best friend, I think, helped me appreciate basketball in a whole new way. I'd grown up on Jordan's Bulls, and also those Knicks teams with John Starks in the 90s. But being up close, being around friends who were hoopers, it taught me something about the other forms of poetry that exceed the page and go where language cannot. So this is for him, but also for my grandma, who was the greatest, Charlotte Elizabeth Ballard. May she rest. Happy birthday, Al Roker. It's how every August 20th call opens between me and Devin for a decade. Shifting only once, we are old enough for mortgages, knee pain, the same blue joke about being here at all. Black men past 25, with a harrowing percentage of brothers we chased in childhood now in chains, graves instead of here with us, on the phone, or else in some gentrified bar, growing old over bourbon. I can no longer recall how the ritual was built. Something to do with my relationship to meteorology, perhaps, as it holds many things I adore within its frame and feels much more like the prophecy of old than anything you see on TV these days, unless you watch the sort of shows that Grandma did before she went the way of everything too beautiful for permanence. Al Roker is a weatherman. He conveys in human speech what we cannot pull from the sky's great gray drama. The tropical storm is over his shoulder now, spinning, harmless only at this level of abstraction. I change into the raincoat that matches my favorite hat. In poems, I grow immortal. Time gathers in my hair, like a silver city, seen at a distance. All right, a couple more.
So beautiful.
Yeah, I grew up eating salmon out of a can. That's important for this next poem. I didn't actually see a whole salmon until I was in graduate school. I had to get to Princeton first, which is there's a poem in there maybe all by itself. But I think a lot about growing up in the Bronx and Yonkers and the way I thought about the limits of language. My grandmother, she owned and operated 3 salons in Harlem. She was a sharecropper as a teenage girl. That's how she met my grandfather, in a strawberry field right outside of Wilmington, North Carolina. And whenever they would tell the story of meeting and falling in love, they would always talk about the redness of that field and not the sharecropping, which I think really shaped my ethos as a poet. You can't really describe the terror without the beauty, the same way you can't describe the beauty without the terror, as folks like Fred Moten remind us. But this is really a poem about vocabulary and my big sister, who honed her voice by singing Whitney Houston every day in the back of our house. You would just hear her kind of belting at the top of her voice. So she taught me something about practice and how to practice this thing. Trash Part 3. Saturdays, it was my job to pick the bones from cans of fish, which became the unwieldy piles of pink flesh that, once fried, became the cakes we ate for dinner that night. Breakfast the next day, dinner again to close the loop. Decades passed before I saw the beast in real time, realized, like James Baldwin, who once saw his mother lift a yard of velvet, say, "That is a good idea," and for months thought that ideas were shocks of black fabric. That salmon lived outside the bounds of Food Town shelves. We searched for deals in the early 90s. Supermarket circulars held tight in our two small hands, armaments against American cost. Older now, a literary type with insurance to boot, I tell you this story at our kitchen table, unsure of what I'm trying to convey exactly. Something about the flexible nature of human knowledge, perhaps. A speed course in semiotics over poached eggs. Or maybe some version of the same tale I am always telling, that the wall between the world and me grew weaker once I left what I loved. Children of the poor, their small words and smaller sense of scale. Back then, life on earth was Yonkers, New York, and my grandmother's salon. Every leather-bound book was a word of God. And there I was, an affront to history, creative even in my ignorance, sketching planets in the air, as my big sister sang soul outside our bedroom window, her voice like something ancient and winged, pulling summer into being. Mm. All right. Oh, thank y'all so much. The applause is bringing me back to my spoken word days. You're about to make me go to a slam after this. This is phenomenal. Okay, so maybe like two more. How are we doing on time? Are we okay?
I didn't look, honey.
Okay. My conversation with Amr earlier has me thinking, well, what is Western time really? We'll just go with vibes. So I'll try to vibe toward maybe two or three more, and then
Yeah,
perfect. The women in my grandmother's salon would also pay me $1 if I could spell a word longer than 3 syllables. So I was a 6-year-old boy talking about malfeasance, and how certain sounds were ubiquitous, and how being loquacious was both my great dream and perhaps my great flaw. And I just think about that a lot, and Tom and I were talking about the humanities, and all this talk at our jobs about how the humanities are under duress. I'm like, man, I've loved the humanities since I was in kindergarten. For me, that was a certain kind of humanistic practice. Not just that you could enter the economy, perhaps, through perfecting language, but also this idea that it's the point of what we do. Not just politics, but art, as Baraka reminds us, right? It's to protect truth and beauty. And people have always cared about that. Poor people really care about that across the world. Black Americans really care about the humanities. We really care about history, Black History Month was created by teachers. Carter G. Woodson came up with Negro History Week, but it was Black teachers all across this country that passed that holiday, amongst themselves and helped create this celebration. So this is a poem about apples that's kind of inspired about that, but is mostly also about another historian I met on the internet named John. He's an apple historian in Maine who saw this poem in the New Yorker and wrote me a DM, and he said, man, I love that apple poem. If you and your wife and son are ever hungry, you can always come to Maine and get fed. And I thought that was really beautiful. I also didn't know apple history was its own kind of discrete sub-discipline, but I'm really glad that exists. This is Dad Poem X. You can't have apples with everything, we say to our son over breakfast, but that's not technically true. He knows this, I suspect, though his face reflects a certain understanding, as if he's willing to negotiate. Before we moved here, I knew so little of apples, their untamed array of shapes and names, Ginger Gold, Honeycrisp, Crispin, Cortland, Cameo, both Rome and Empire somehow, which feels like it must be an inside joke between members of the committee. Fuji, Wine Sap, Ruby Frost, which could be either a miracle or a plague. I can't decide which. Paula Red is a Soviet secret agent. Envy is a deadly sin. Holstein and Ambrosia have skin like a storm on a televised map. On the ride upstate to the orchard, I recount all the types to myself in a private game. Select my prize in advance. Bags filled with liberty and jazz will be my aims, like any good American. 2 months earlier, it's not yet my birthday. I'm in an office in Brighton. The doctor has never seen a case quite like mine. During the test, I make every task a language game, even the ones with semicircles and blocks. This part of my mind is hypercharged, he says, like a quasar or loving dispute. That morning, I cut a Brayburn into eighths and cast the pieces into a small blue bowl, a handful of rowboats swaying. At the orchard, we are stars set loose, across the mind of a boy in a field on his back, dreaming with both eyes open. We run for hours. We gather enough apples to sate ourselves for weeks on nothing but their cold red wealth. What marvels! This most metaphorical of fruits, Newtonian, Edenic, pure delight, mighty and bright, and the orchard, like a coliseum of planets you could hold in your hand. All right, 2 more. Thank y'all so much. 2 more poems. I haven't brought Gwendolyn Brooks in here yet, which is a shame, so I will now. And I talked a bit about my grandmother. She passed away in 2020, which among other things means that I had to attend her funeral on Zoom. And I don't know, it's really stuck with me. I feel like I felt her with me in readings lately and when I lecture and talk to my students about what we're doing when we do this thing called writing poetry. My grandmother never had to read off of a page. She had so many poems memorized, folk tales, and she had this talent show in the South Bronx Projects on Story Avenue. What a name, Story Avenue, that she would host every Christmas, and all the kids had to perform. You could perform a Bible verse, you could do Bobby Brown choreography, which I would do sometimes, or you could read a poem. And if you fell short, people would cover for you, They would chime in with the words, or they come do the dance with you. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things we do as human beings. We cover for each other. So this poem is in some ways a cover. It takes a line from Gwendolyn Brooks, and it's for my son, August. I also had to go to his ultrasounds via a screen, at least the first 3 of them. And then for the 4th one, they actually let me in the hospital. And then I got to see his birth 2 days later, which was one of the great miracles of my life. Shout out to Pam, my wife Pam, without whom I could not travel, and read poems anywhere. She's one of the great lights of my life, and a great poet too. Dad poem number 3, ultrasound number 2, with a line from Gwendolyn Brooks. Months into the plague now, I'm disallowed entry even into the waiting room with Mom, escorted outside instead by men armed only with guns and bottles of hand sanitizer, their entire countenance, its own American metaphor. So the first time I see you in full force, I am pacing maniacally up and down the block outside, FaceTiming the radiologist and your mother too, her arm angled like a cellist to help me see. We are dazzled by the sight of each bone in your feet, the pulsing black archipelago of your heart, your fists in front of your face like mine when I was only just born, 10 times as big as you are now. Your great-grandmother calls me Tyson the moment she sees this pose. Prefigures a boy built for conflict, her barbarous and metal little man. She leaves the world only months after we learn you are entering into it, and her mind the year before that. In the dementia's final days, she envisions herself as a girl of 17, running through fields of strawberries, unfettered as a kingfisher. I watch her stance and imagine her laughter echoing back across the ages, you, her youngest descendant born into freedom, our littlest burden lifter, world beater, avant-garde percussionist, swinging darkness into song. All right.
So wonderful.
Thank y'all. All right, my last poem, which I'll read quickly, and then we can hear Tom read his work. This is Dad poem number 12, The New Temporality, and it's just about the stage I'm actually in now. I have a 5-month-old daughter at home, June, so we're not really sleeping much in the house. We're just having dance parties and mashing up carrots and pears and hanging out as a group. And I remember when my son August was first born, the biggest surprise was that I didn't care about writing at all anymore. I went 8 months, I didn't write a poem. I didn't give a public lecture. And for the first time since I was maybe 5 years old, I didn't think about sounding smart in public at all. I didn't care. I was too tired to care. But I had this, this organism, this human being who I had to take care of. And I turned into Spider-Man somehow. Like if he started rolling off the couch, I could jump across the room and catch him. I was just in my body in this totally new way. And so this is a poem for him and the parents and the children that we all were. As June Jordan reminds us, the child is the universal position. Anyone alive either is a child or was one. And I think poetry in many ways is one of the few opportunities as a society we give people to return to childlike imagination and find something beautiful. So this is Dad poem number 12. No poems, not even one, since the minute you were born. Now I live the thing that was the writing, more intensely, alongside you each day. Hours blur and are measured only in feedings, naps just quick enough to not subtract from your later dreaming. Mom and I divide the night into shifts, dance through the fog of sleep deficits doctors say we won't feel the weight of until wintertime. So what? Our home glows like a field of rushes, moonlight ensnared in their flaxen heads. Most early mornings with you are mine. We play the elevator game and improvise lyrics rhyming August with raucous, florist, flawless. As I write this, you rest in a graphite gray carrier on my chest, your thinking adorned with language that obeys no order my calcified mind can express. Tomorrow, I will do the thing where I make my voice sound like a trombone, and I hope you like it as much as you did today. There is no sorrow I can easily recall. I have consecrated my life. Thank you.
Wonderful, honey, wonderful. What a wonderful reading. Thank you so much, Joshua. That was wonderful. Our next winner is Tom Sleigh, who is the author of 11 books of poetry, including the winner of the 2023 Paterson Poetry Prize, The King's Touch from Graywolf Press, House of Facts, House of Ruin, Graywolf Press, Station Z, also from Graywolf and Army Cats. His most recent book of essays, The Land Between Two Rivers, Writing in an Age of Refugees, recounts his time as a journalist in the Middle East and Africa. He's been a Guggenheim Fellow, NEA grant recipient, and winner of numerous awards, including the Kingsley Tufts Award, Shelley Memorial Award from the Poetry Society of America, John Updike Award, and Academy Award from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. He's a distinguished professor in the MFA program at Hunter College and lives in Brooklyn, New York. Let's welcome Tom Sleigh.
Well, I'm just going to stand up.
You can stand up if you...
No, I will.
Oh, okay, because
Yeah.
I need to record your audio.
Oh, I understand. All right. Okay. Well,
Sorry, honey.
that's all right. I'm perfectly happy to sit. I just wanted to say it was. Joshua and I were talking beforehand, and one of the nice things about this reading is that I actually have someone to share the honor with. And one of the things I like about sharing the honor with Joshua, particularly after hearing him read so beautifully, is that you feel as if, when he said he was 35, I thought,
Oh, God.
Jeez.
Me too. I felt the same way.
I know. I thought, well, I'm 71. So, I've been around for a long, long time, and I won't be around for, all that much longer, I imagine. But I immediately had the feeling, so what? The art form is in very good hands. So, another round of applause. I think I'm going to make a hinge with what Joshua did. But before I do that, I just want to say a word about the workshop today. The folks who showed up, the very first person, Abby, she said, well, yeah, I'm an English teacher. The second person came in and said, well, yeah, I'm a retired English teacher. Third person came in, yeah, I'm a retired English. Everybody in my class was an English teacher, and I thought to myself, this is going to be a piece of cake. And it really was, because suddenly I was there, and I didn't have to explain or to make clear to them what Joshua and I were talking about earlier, that is the importance of the humanities in people's lives, and not just in some kind of, abstract, the humanities are good for you in the same way that, castor oil is good for you. But in a way that really, really kind of transforms your life and makes your life more interesting every day because you're never bored, Because it's always a challenge. It's always hard to do. So I'll read for 20 minutes or so. Let's see here. I think I'm going to, why not? I'll start there. So we were talking in the workshop today. The name of Phil Levine came up. Phil was one of my dearest friends, and I knew him ever since forever. I mean, the first time I ever heard Phil read, first time I ever heard any poet read, was a million years ago at San Diego State University, where I was in high school. Don't ask me how I ended up there, but I did. And there was this guy up on stage. Actually, it was in the middle of a gymnasium, and he was wearing tennis shoes and jeans and a T-shirt. And I listened to him read, and I thought, wow, that was wonderful. And then I thought, I'm wearing tennis shoes and jeans and a T-shirt. How hard can it be? And I learned. I learned a lot. In any case, when Phil died, he died rather quickly, and he called me and wanted me to come visit him out in Fresno where he lived. He lived between Fresno and Brooklyn. And he said, Tom, you better get out here if you want to see me. And I said, okay, I'll get out on a plane and come out right away. And so I did. And one of the things you have to know about Phil is he died as irreverently as he lived. He was one of the funniest people on the planet. And he was not of that generation which, wore their hearts on their sleeve, far from it. Where I am somewhat milkier in my, affections. Anyway, I went into the house and I said to Phil, God, Phil, I really love you. And Phil said to me, Tom, I really love you too. And then 40 minutes went by and I just felt this huge swelling of emotion. And I said, Phil, I really love you. Phil kind of looked down his nose at me and said with notably less enthusiasm, Tom, I really love you too. And then I don't know what possessed me, but in any case, 40 minutes go by and I say, Phil, and Phil said, Tom, stop. Let's not use that word. And I thought to myself, okay, you're right, I won't use that word. But then I wrote a poem called That Word. So the only thing you need to know about Phil is that he had a lifelong heart arrhythmia. And otherwise you'll think the ending of the poem is poetic, but it isn't. It's literal. That word. He sits reading under his desk lamp. He loves how wind distresses tail and mane. He likes the rhymes internal and irregular, how people from the old days walk in and out of the poem, how the father who dies in one stanza can rise in another, how, despite the drought, the rain keeps falling in 14 lines. His rumpled bed is never not specific as the dent his head leaves in the pillow. He rubs his hand across his jaw, unshaven. His touch on the back of your wrist is delicate and urgent. When you help him up from bed, he isn't shy about holding on. When he lies back down, he grips his water bottle and won't let go. Smiling, says, let's not use that word. It's been used 10,876 times. He shrugs off the weepers, the brotherly lovers, the sour preachers turning purple and blue in their dandruff-sprinkled robes. Out in his backyard in Fresno, the oranges are ripening. At his window in Brooklyn, the plane trees, stripped bare of leaves, click softly in the breeze. Him in his undershirt, in his tweed jacket, in sweatpants, watching Norbert Szymanski clean and jerk. Now he's throwing rocks on the bridle path. He's turning into a fox. The brush of his tail mocks the pack. He leaps clear of his own tracks, doubles back, loses the lords and ladies riding. Now he's preaching to rats, showing them pages in holy books, money books, books of the entitled that are good to eat and chew right down. But all alone in a study with ice and sun, he scrawls with his fountain pen, crosses it all out, starts again. And this time, rising up are the sheared away walls of an abandoned high school, a stack of rusted axles, a diner where nobody talks openly of love, but where ketchup and mockery are served up with the coffee, and his heart, arrhythmic, pulses out of sync, all on its own. Thank you. I mean, I think maybe like Joshua, both of us find it rather disconcerting to have applause after poems. But go ahead. I think I'm going to make a hinge with Joshua. He read about one of his children at the end there, so I'll read about my daughter. And it's interesting, I'm on the other side of it. She's 28 years old and she's a wonderful young woman. I adore her. She's just great. And she has found so many ways, as I was saying to the workshop today, to condescend to me. And she bosses me around mercilessly, and I sort of love it when I see her. In any case, she came into my life through divorce, kind of random process of divorce, and now feels like my daughter. But you don't know exactly what to call one another. And so we kind of came up with this formulation that I would be her dad, that is her dear, almost dad, and she would be my dad, that is my dear, almost daughter. So that kind of explains the sort of relationship that she had. Everything that I found about having a daughter or having a child, period, is knowing at what distance things work. Called Breaker. It's the first time I ever met Hannah. She's about 7, 8 years old. There Sarah and I are, all those years ago. And Hannah, still just a little girl, too scared, defiant, jealous to leave her mother for long, as she took her very first walk with me down the beach that afternoon. The waves running white against the offshore wind sent up spray blowing off the wave tops as they shaped into green tints where a seal, magnified in its glide down the foaming face, mirrored her bundled energy and grace as she refused to take my hand, reminding me how different she is from me when I was a child. So malleable to my parents' moods, an inward sulk I never showed, my only rebellion. Wind blew salt in both our faces, which she licked off her lips. "Come on, Hannah," I said. "Let's keep walking." But suddenly she turned from me and ran toward Sarah, running the way a foal does, all instinct and anxious need toward its mother. And now, all those years ago are swept away at an outdoor restaurant, the sun cool but bright, and she's happy to see us. She rolls her eyes at my jokes, which is why I tell them, knowing that if she mocks me, she still trusts me. Her compass needle swiveling this way, that, but always pointing out beyond us, who once were her circumference, now shrinking to so much less. Breaker on breaker, other lives pour over hers, as right now on the phone, a friend's voice, brave but gnawed at by rage and fear, tells me about her brain tumor, how she can't make her eyes focus, how she can't find herself in space, how the attendants at the rehab place won't let her go to the bathroom by herself because she'll fall. But then she asks, "What's up with Hannah? How's Hannah?" Youth, age. Sitting here alone, staring at the cement water tower on top of the old brick housing complex, the leaves on the plane trees faintly turning yellow, shuffling in the breeze. How do all these hours enter into one life that keeps telling me, none too convincingly, that it's mine? It's as if I'm that seal tented in the wave, my path down the breaker, a slow motion glide that seems never to end. But how short a span until the wave heels over and crumples around me, exploding every which way in foam and spray as I pop up above the waves, curious and wary of what the humans are doing. The little one turning from the big one and running away. And like said in the introduction, I spent ever since 2007, I've been doing journalism in Middle East and Africa, almost exclusively about refugee issues. And so, I've been to Libya and Syria and Lebanon and Jordan, Somalia, Mogadishu, and generally in times of terrible. Well, every moment, there are some moments that are worse, some moments that are somewhat better. But one thing that I've always learned, and I was saying this to a participant today, that when you do the kind of thing I do, you're almost always in a place where, there's a war, has been a war, will be a war. And you see a lot of things that you wouldn't ordinarily see. And this poem starts off one place and takes a hard left turn in the second part. And a lot of the work I've done focuses on Palestinian refugees. And I was sitting there at the computer one day, and up at the corner of the screen, I saw this weird disturbance, and I thought, what the hell is that? And I looked really closely and more closely, and there's this little spider. And he was about ready to weave a web on my computer screen. And whatever horseshit I was writing, I stopped. And thought, okay, Well, all right. In which a spider weaves a web on my computer screen. Part 1. What is that shadow that weaves itself so fine across the edge of my computer screen? There it is, a pinprick of a spider, weaving a web I'm looking through, as if it were a veil of second sight that, as I type these words behind the veil, the screen light shines right through. It weaves the sun into its web and turns the screen into a mirror, shooting back my own eyes, looking at the spider and wondering what the spider knows of me. Hello, pal, I want to say, but that feels unctuous, overly familiar for what I know I'm going to do. The web sways and ripples each time I breathe, getting ready to rip it away. There's a lot of casual brutality to reconcile. The spider clings to its web's outer rim, plucks with a slender leg a near invisible guy wire each time I type a word, and the silk trembles. 2. He said that being a refugee was like living like a spider in the bottom of a well. He held his quiet dignity close to him. The others in the room stopped talking. I won't repeat exactly what he said, since it's his to tell. But it had to do with how his mother died, how his home was destroyed. The words you use to talk about such things, the second they're uttered, sound suspect. For him to say, "The soldiers shot my father, they blew up our house, and the worst thing I ever saw, the very worst, was seeing my baby brother crying on my dead mother's breast," is only my rendering in English what the translator, speaking in French, said he said. Raveled in words as a spider is raveled in its silk, I think I should know what to want to say. But to want to say is not what the man, in his use of a figure, of a spider, drifting, suspended, tethered to a lifeline, spinning out, impossibly fine, intends when he says, "The deeds to my house are stained with blood," and then shows you the stains. 3 long stains, dried brown and fading above the signature line. Mm-hmm. And why don't I finish with this? I always say to myself, you can't possibly write a poem off of YouTube, Tom. So, lo and behold, I began to write a poem off of YouTube. If you go on YouTube, you will see there's a beautiful YouTube video of a man out in the bush, and he has had a piano transported there, and it's a kind of an elephant sanctuary, and he's playing Debussy for the elephant. He's playing Clair de Lune, like the old chestnut, dee 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 dee. And you're going, and the elephant is really into it. And I have to say, my mother died 2 years ago. She took her own life just about this time. And as I was reading this poem the other day at another venue or occurrence, it suddenly dawned on me that the elephant in the poem really is a kind of figure of my mother, who was also blind. But the poem is, a man plays Debussy for a blind, 84-year-old female elephant. I read today how, when a poet was going mad, hearing voices under his bed, his friend hid a speaking tube inside the wall and would whisper encouraging suggestions that the poet shouldn't kill himself, should wait till after breakfast when sun and sausages and eggs would put him in a more hopeful frame of mind. But my friend Liam killed himself, and Tree, his wife, said that was what he wanted. Nobody should pity her or him, which, by the same token, reminds me of the young Palestinian woman at a protest, telling me just after she was tear-gassed how she had no regrets, my voice coming out of nowhere, since her eyes, stinging, were tearing up so badly she couldn't see. And yet today, when I read how a poet was going mad, hearing voices, there was another voice inside me, interfering with the voice that said, "You're better off dead, you useless piece of shit." Only it wasn't a voice, but a melody, echoing from an out-of-tune piano that a man alone in the bush was playing for an elephant. An old blind female in her baggy hide and cataracted eyes, who had spent her life hauling logs, being beaten and abused, and now kept her distance from the herd, a loner, restless, or so her keepers at Elephant's World said. But listening to the music seemed to calm her, her homely flat feet shuffling side to side, her ears flapping to cool herself, but also to show pleasure, even joy. Yeah, that's what they claimed, joy. As the quiet melancholy rising to near ecstasy of Claire de Lune ascends to the high notes where elephant and pianist and listener all meld before descending gradually to more lush and subtly darker harmonies. Today I read how a poet going mad. But you've heard all that before. When I was a boy, all we kids played elephant, swinging our arms like trunks as we shuffled head to tail or stampeded across the playground, driving off the lions and tigers and trampling our science teacher, Mr. Allen, his little glasses flying off his head as we joyously stomped him, trumpeting aloud. Why did we so hate him? And why can't I stop seeing that greenish pall of tear gas hanging heavy above the street? It's as if invisible fingers keep playing on our neurons as man and elephant walk off into the bush, and just before the underbrush closes in, both come to a halt and stand facing one another. The man patting her trunk, curling around him to rest on his shoulder as he shuts his eyes and leans his forehead against hers. It's like each one's listening to what the other's thinking, elephant thoughts of chains and things to eat, human ones of poets, sane or mad, until the music goes still and both elephant and human dissolve into sunlight, falling on the piano, all alone among the hills. Thanks very much.
Beautiful time.
Thank you.
Our next poet is one of three finalists. Codjoe is the author of Bluest, Nude, winner of the Lenore Marshall Poetry Prize, and finalist for the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Poetry, the Kate Tufts Discovery Award, and the Paterson Poetry Prize. Blood of the Air, winner of the Drinking Gourd Chapbook Poetry Prize. Her honors include a 2017 Rona Jaffe Foundation Writers Award, a Creative Writing Fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts, an NYSCA, NYFA Artist Fellowship, and a Jerome Hill Artist Fellowship. In 2023, Codjoe was appointed as the second poet in the residence at the Guggenheim Museum. She is the recipient of the 2023 Whiting Award and 2024 Arts and Letters Award in Literature from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. Let's welcome Amma. I should have said also totally beautiful. Isn't she?
I am your reflection.
Oh, yeah. Don't even wish that on yourself, honey.
Well, how many books have you written?
Excuse me,
How
25.
many? So, I would like some of that. Hey, everybody. What a space of feeling. I'm never not stunned by what poetry does. So thank you so much for your readings, Tom and Joshua. Yes, I want to say thanks to everybody for being here, and also nurturers and keepers of the space, Smita, Maria, and the other finalists, Julia, and whoever else is not here. I'm going to start with a poem that has a lot of music in it and not say much about it. Marigolds of Fire. 1. He had a caribou's face. Once he let me lick the sadness there. It tasted of salt and moss-covered rocks. He grew the beard of a mountain goat. He scaled the face of a mountain. Lying beside him, I stared into the face of faceless waters whose velvet antlers cradled us. He wore a bison's face. Sometimes he wallowed in the dust, tossing his head from side to side, wearing deep grooves into the braided rug. Mornings he refused to betray his dreams. He had an antelope's face. I could go on like this. I liked how he led me almost a shove, how he kissed me, mercy, how I kissed him back, my back against the foyer wall. Sometimes we called to each other like birds. It wasn't ritual. How can I explain? He laced his fingers, made his knees a ladder. I braced myself on his backward horns. I climbed him then into the tree. 2. In the end, we were delivered back to the strange mud from which we crawled. The bed gave us back, unastonished, our aching, separate bodies. This is skin, it told us. Skin, I wrote. I would commit its meaning to memory. 3. A football player slaps the butt of a passing girl. She turns to face a silvered hand dangling from each player's wrist. Windless chimes. Under their helmets, the teammates wear the same blank face. Can I tell you I wanted them all? 4. In the beginning, there was blood or the threat of blood. Formed from clay, we sought a fire that could finish us. We sewed a garland of marigolds. We ate good blossoms whole. 5. He takes his coffee with cream and sugar. She takes it black. She scans her wardrobe for a dress. They respond to emails and tidy their desks. At 4 a.m., the garbage truck jostles her awake. He sleeps best on his side, on his back, on his belly. He calls her lady. Though before she'd wince at this term of endearment, she hears the word babe slip out of her. It slips out of her mouth. His eyes are tired. She has bags under her eyes. She waters the cactus. In a slip, the sky turns stormy. He forgets the umbrella. She wants to storm out. He believes she'll leave. He forgets to call. She calls him a name. She takes it back. He takes it black. No sugar. She's confused. He wants a baby. She winces. They rub their eyes. It was a slip, a mistake. He packs his bags. She irons a sky blue dress. She can't stand his silences, the way he slips in and out of her. The phone was on silent. The ringer was off. She removes the ring from the tub. He sleeps on the couch on his side. The sky is a bath of coffee grounds. Her face is full of clouds. His eye waters. Somewhere near a marsh, there's a starling roosting. I'm saying the middle was filled with the end. Thank you. So just so you don't think that Julia and I are being humble, we have a shorter time to read, so I'm just forewarning you. In the kind of spirit of the hinge that Tom did, I would love to be in community with Joshua and Tom and thinking about family. And first I'm going to bring in Gwendolyn Brooks and echo with Joshua. Heaven as Olympic Spa, Koreatown, Los Angeles. Gwendolyn Brooks stood stark naked. I stared into her bespectacled eyes. Miss Brooks showed me how to tend to myself by scrubbing dead skin with a coarse washcloth, rinsing the body's detritus down a common drain. My flesh was taut, loose, and dying. Even in paradise, I was dying. At first, this surprised me. Oh, the capsized boat of the body, Wanda Coleman sighed. We keep sailing, even when we believe we're ashore. Coleman drifted to sleep on the heated jade floor. Clasping my spa-provided robe, I lay on my side beside her. Do the dead dream? I wondered to myself. Wrong question, Coleman muttered. I remembered sleeping beside my mother, touching her nightgown lightly as if a gesture could restore the cord that in the beginning tethered us, as if I smelled her death in the satin scarf keeping the plastic curlers in place, or in the Vaseline glossing her arms. In childhood, I pined for my mother, though she was there. Here, in the afterlife, I had no mind to search for her. I was freed from a loss that haunted me even before it occurred. Gwendolyn Brooks hummed a wordless song that stripped me of all longing. I untied the robe's stiff belt and walked amongst the nude women, my skin brushed smooth and silent. I was ordinary and motherless. Because I was not alone, my nakedness felt unremarkable. I didn't miss my mother. I didn't miss missing her. Okay. This is my last poem. A family woven like night through trees. The man asks, "Do you have a family?" My thinking brushes the air between us like a wet mark stains white paper. My mother's mother, dead 22 years, a stone house, the ants I've killed. Robin, who, when someone hurls toward me a small cruelty, cries. Memphis in August, my twin brother crunching ice, all the cousins I've made, walking amongst cedar trees. New Yorkers on New Year's Day or the first day of spring. Not children I've birthed, but dead leaves raked into prickly hills made messy with our falling. Artists skinny dipping in the ocean at night. It was family that surged and fell away. But the ties my grandfather wore on Sundays are kite tails in my closet. The mums my mother planted are tiny, decadent flames. Family returns like a sun, the way a wave is always and never the same. For once, it is not about the body. I listened as my friend's urge to kill herself grew clamorous as a field of bells. She stank of it. Her voice reeked, streaked with ringing, and as if she were wreathed in baby's breath, clothed in a robe of dianthus, as if she'd been washed by a river stripped of silt and mud. I drew her close, inhaled her musk, and brought her brow to mine. I mean to say, her blood was mine. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Our next honorable mention poet is James Hoch, and he's the author of Miscreants and Parade of Hands. His poems have appeared in Best American Poetry, Canyon Review, Poetry Daily, Tin House, and many other publications. Originally from New Jersey, he resides in the Hudson Valley and is professor of creative writing at Ramshaw College and a guest faculty at Sarah Lawrence College. Let's welcome James Hoch.
It's so nice to meet you.
Thank you, dear.
I've been following your life ever since I started writing poems, so it's really
a nice
an honor.
Thing to say. Thank you.
I'm not 30-something, but you know.
Well, honey, I'm 84, so you can't beat me at this point.
Well, let's hope not. You know, I'm really glad. I'm just glad to be here, and what an honor to read with these wonderful poets. I met Tom about 25 years ago. He came to my college. I was a first-year graduate student, and I was asked by our mutual friend, Michael Collier, to do the introduction for Tom. I've never done an introduction before. It was perhaps longer than his reading. And I don't mean that figuratively. I think it was more of an essay. I went through all his books, but it was an error that I was mocked for a number of years. But I hold it. No.
No, he was grateful.
Yeah, exactly. No, do go on. So I'm just going to read 3 poems from Last Pawn Shop in New Jersey. You know, when I came up with the title, I'm like, maybe this will get me to Paterson, you know?
And it did.
Yeah, it did, yeah. Yeah. So this poem's called Dedication. This poem, excuse me. This poem is to my son, who I worry into a misshapen form of worry, and to worry itself, how it hangs like a blanket over the head of a horse. Why do they blanket the heads of horses standing alone in a field, not seeing, their skins seeking each other's aloneness? I have no idea. I have never owned a horse, though property is no giver of ideas. Forgive me, my mother has died. I'm trying to understand, so my son understands why his father is saying nothing in the car, the yard, at the table. My mother has died. Do you know? It's like standing in a field, then it's like the field being gone. No one notices in the clumsy fog. Do you see there is no distance? She is not a thing. There are no figures for this grief. The air tastes of ground. Have you ever lost all context? The other day, walking across the room, my son looked at me like he was eyeing a sick planet. Oh, that's both sad and funny. Then put his arms around his weeping father, as if holding a planet might heal it. I want to thank him, but only have this poem, a raft made from the skins of horses. It is wrong, he feels asked to wade. His love just wants to rush out, a busted hydrant, or forever sunny day.
Beautiful.
This is the sort of the title poem, Self-Portrait as Last Pawn Shop in New Jersey. And the idea was that I started thinking of when I had kids, and this might come to some of you, you think you're a thing, you know, a figure in the world. And then you realize you're just this thing that people run through, you know, sort of ransack. It's like breaking and entering, you know. They just grab shit and leave, you know, and it's sometimes they grab really awful things about you and run away, and you're like, be careful with that. That's called anger. And then, you know, easy with the masculinity, can turn toxic, you know, that sort of thing. But, you know, so Self-Portrait as the Last Pawn Shop in New Jersey. Lately, I have not been feeling myself. I walk around like a figure missing its ground. I see a braid of smoke a hand passes through, and envy hands. How smoke stays on skin. The faint hairs of a cheek a hand brushes against. Used to be enough to be the blown engine of a VW outside of Durango. Whiskey we killed watching our father die. A bad painting I loved because our mother loved bad paintings. Without irony. Lead sinkers in the great bay of self. There, I'd say, strapped to the mast of a tall ship in a Turner painting, or a grip dangling from the center pole of a circus tent, above a troop of dachshunds trying to find the tiny pedals of tricycles. I collected myself like I was vying to be the last pawn shop in New Jersey. Now I am not even a whir of gnats on a dirt road, a threadbare cloud on a ridge line, the steam riding off an old man stepping out of a sauna. Days, nothing seems to tie me to me. The more I live, the more the rucksack lightens, the more I can't find myself in the mirror of the world, and roam storefronts as if I have misplaced myself. When I was a kid, I used to keep a Pringles can filled with volcano rocks someone once sold as Apache tears. One weird-ass way of marketing pain. Gone now is the name of the boy I bailed out of stealing CDs from Walmart for the girl he crushed on, which is not really a crime, I explained to the cops. The girl loved Stevie Nicks so much I found her stoned under blackberry bramble, listening to Landslide on a Walkman. Perhaps it matters to say they were Apache or Pueblo, Inde or Kiowa, that they were minor thieves flung far from home. Perhaps all they wanted was the ground inside each other. But even as I say Landslide, Walkman, I feel the scree of words, the pawn shop emptying out. The things that made me are ether now, as clear as those who went and died and took what mattered. Bodies, a joke, a late meal that wove itself in the morning, as if they had packed for the afterlife. And empty and whole and empty, the air inside me tastes like leaving, and leaving tastes like rain that never comes, which I love like breath on a window, like someone taking some time, some pleasure, drawing a heart, a face. No wonder I marvel over the demo crew who are slaying each other. Fuckwad, lug nut, waste of skin, cuts, we used to call them, nicking wing, heel, gutting into laughter, then tender, as one with angels or dogs, where the wound is transom. The words hold them to the ground, and I am whatever hovers when they go.
Beautiful.
Last poem, The Listening. Thank you again. You look like you've seen a ghost. Yes. Yeah, I know. It's been a long time, We were inseparable for a number of years. I know, we'll talk about it, but it's not you, it's not me, it's just time. Yeah. The Listening for Catherine. Barnett. Snow again. I can't hear it falling in birches, yard, garden beds, heady tufts and root down of winter carrots, though I stare out there as if listening to the making. The way a kid, I'd rise in the middle of night looking for my father, the house the usual dark I'd sleepwalk through. Eventually, someone would find me sitting on the living room floor, W-sitting, snow on television, or staring canvas blank out a window. Snowman, they'd call. Nudge me back. Silence cracking like a crocus. The reveal, all that breaking, a kiss. I don't know if I loved anything more. When my father died, a backhoe broke the sky open, which filled with crows, and the dusting coated the cars lining the cemetery road. Snow falling on my father's death day? A little much, even for me, so prone to melancholy, which is a way of sketching your loss. Years ago, I had a friend who used to say, love is a kind of opening. She had a freezer stashed with vodka and chocolate, a way of making me crash on her couch. My friend was talking about trees, what we know, what we feel, how they conspire each other. I was afraid my body would fly open, a blizzard of wings, and that if I gave up grieving, he'd die all over again, and I'd die without something to grieve. She must have known this too, how winter shuts a mouth down, then more mouth, more mouth. Some days, the light right, I walk an hour or so into a stand of birches, the space between trees, and it's like the trees pass through me, ghosts of my breath, my father, my friends sitting on the couch in her apartment, all there. I hear them talking and want to slip off my shoes. Snow, listening, the nerve to stay a while. It's exactly like she was saying. Thanks a lot.
Beautiful, honey.
Thank you so much.
Our next finalist is Julia Lisella, and she's the author of 3 full-length collections of poetry, Our Lively Kingdom, Always, and Terrain, and the chapbook Love Song Hiroshima. Her poems appear in numerous anthologies. She is also a scholar and critic specializing in women's writing, Italian-American literature, American poetry, and modernism. She is co-editor of Modernist Women Writers and American Social Engagement. She holds a BA in English from Barnard College, an MA in Creative Writing from New York University, and a PhD in English from Tufts. She's a professor of English at Regis College in Massachusetts. Born and raised in Queens, New York, she makes her home in Massachusetts and co-curates the Italian-American Writers in Boston literary series at I Am Books in Boston's North End. Let's welcome Julia Lisella.
Thank you, Maria. And Maria featured for us in Boston, and it was a fabulous night.
Thank you.
Everyone was standing to honor her.
And my daughter started to cry.
Yeah, good. Make them cry, right?
Well, I felt terrible. I felt guilty.
Oh,
and her stepdaughter's there patting her on the back. Anyway,
it wasn't a good crying? I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was a good crying.
Maybe not. And James, I'm sorry, we didn't realize you were here, so Amma and I were taking pleasure in being the 2 finalists, but it was so wonderful to hear your work. And so great to see Tom. I took a workshop with Tom many years ago, and then finally to meet Joshua and Amma, who, I'm scheduling her in Western Massachusetts for events. And yeah. But I have to tell you a funny story. When the letter came from the Poetry Center, I didn't open it. And my husband
it was a fundraiser.
I did. My husband said, "Why don't you open that?" I said, "They just want money. What do you mean? I'll take care of it later." And he said, "I just have a funny feeling about that. I think you should open it." So I opened it, and then he said, "You can't stop smiling, can you?" I was so thrilled, and I'm really thrilled to be in Paterson, where there's so much poetry history, and to be at the Poetry Center that you've just created this amazing thing here. It's really special. So I feel very honored to be among you winners, for sure. My bio that you read made me sound like such a scholar. Wow, I don't know what I sent or what you got, but anyway, it's all good. So I'll just read a few poems from Our Lively Kingdom, and a shout out to my editor at Bordighera Press. These small presses, Nick Grosso is a wonderful editor, and he saw something in the book, and I, really appreciated that. So I'm going to start with a love poem, which I don't usually do, because I think we need more love. Long distance. I'm listening to him, listen to me over the cell phone line. A low swoosh of small stories meant to close a gap in time we'll have when I return. My voice a slow trickle, like rivulets of river water over stones. I watch a bird darting in the underbrush as I tell him a story of our daughter's phone call to me. He responds by telling me he is staring out the back window of our kitchen at our dog on our porch who is staring at a bird in our backyard. He heads outside to put the phone to the dog's ear to see if he will recognize my voice. He says the sound of me does not recall me for the dog. I laugh. He says, which is different than, Thanks. Many of the poems in the book are about the confluences of literary influences, but how they influence a kid who grows up with working class parents, who came through the Depression. My grandparents were immigrants. It's different, So I have a few poems in here, and I'm going to read two of them. This is just a section of a longer poem. During the time I was writing the book, there was this great project online called the Sylvia Plath Project, and the two women who ran it posted in her last year of her life, Sylvia Plath, she wrote nearly a poem a day. Some days she wrote more than one. And this is about one of those days that I was responding to. And then you would respond as a poet. Poems for my birthday. On November 6th, 1962, I was exactly 1, held in the arms of a mother of 4. I was the 4th, the chubbiest, the stillest, easy to manage. She placed me inside the carriage, fixed the blanket with her eyes on something else. She hurried inside to finish her work and did not watch the slow trio, my grandfather pushing the carriage, flanked by the curious black-haired 3-year-old girl, gray-eyed like the doe, unflinching. That day, as my nonno strolled us up and down 246th Street in Belrose, Queens, Sylvia Plath wrote 3 poems in her cold London flat. It was cold. We can know this now. My sister hummed. My grandfather squinted at the unusual November sun, each of us bundled in 60s flannel. My mother wanting to nap, but no, scrubbing a pot, delivering a cup of tea to my cranky grandmother, figuring out dinner. She stands still for a minute, rubs her palms against the sides of her apron. She isn't thinking much, but she can feel the afternoon waning. My grandfather has returned with the 2 of us, and there are so many next things to do. Thanks. This poem, it's a short poem called Anger. And it has 2, I do this, I have very long epigraphs for tiny poems. So this has 2 epigraphs. One is from the Reverend Dr. Maggie Arnold. She was known to say, anger is as sure a signal of love as smoke is of fire. And then this is from the Psalm 37. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself in any way to do evil. When I bend down to hear the rosemary grow, half-shadowed from the sun, struggling for its green scent, I want to strike a blow to each hand carrying a torch that lights a village somewhere. I want anger because I want what I've been warned to avoid. I want to do evil to evil. The scent of rosemary still on my fingers. I roll the needles through my palms. The more I need it, I feel the more that it will grow. So I think I'm good. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good. Okay. This poem is called Thoughts About Hunger on a Morning Walk, and it features my son. So I felt like reading it because yesterday we just dropped my son off, who's much older now, in Bushwick. I don't. Okay. Thoughts about hunger on a morning walk. All life is like that. a pursuit to satiate hunger, hunger for love, hunger for food, hunger for, and in pursuing it, not beauty, but violence, which eats that hunger, persistent as the ants in the cleave of sink, the wasps boring out of the hole in the ground, the dog whining for the company of some mammal nearby, the squirrel carrying half a bagel across the lawn and in a flash dropping it in pursuit of another catch, more life in which to pursue hunger. The lady in night shorts watering the lamppost and the curved brick edging while the grass beneath her slippers yearns. This is the way we trick ourselves, decorating the hunger with potted plants and plastic figurines. My text to my son 200 miles away, "Have a good day, I love you," which is not a real greeting, but the hunger to lift him again in my arms as he once was. Even my mother at 97 still feeding me her hunger, her worry, her thirst, her arms nearly breakable in sleep, joints no longer connecting elbow, knees, and toes. Parrying, contemplating. These are just fillers like so much refuse on the shoreline of a city beach, evidence that we lived, broke open a beer, relished a drumstick or an apple, cores and bones washing up, reminding us of hunger. Now at the kitchen sink, the minuscule ants march ferociously into the sprayed raid, as if each still in life, still in pursuit, still hungry. And I'm just going to end with, I guess I read faster than everybody else. So I'm just going to read this last poem. It has a long epigraph, but I'll try to read that fast. It's called Envelope Poem, and I was inspired by this quote from Jan Bervin in Studies in Scale, her book about Emily Dickinson's writings. It's called The Gorgeous Nothings. And Jan Bervin writes, Emily Dickinson sent this minuscule 2-inch long pencil in a letter to the Bowles. And the quote is, "If it had no pencil, would it try mine?" Wryly nudging them to write. It was enveloped in a letter folded into thirds horizontally, pinned closed at each side. Okay, so this is the poem. Like the poet, my mother wrote letters all her life, puzzling messages half in pencil, half in ink. She'd tape them laboriously instead of pin them, each note almost the same. Instead of a pencil hinting for us to write, a $5 bill sometimes crimped into a small square, and when most mischievous, a single dollar folded many times, and "Have a cup of coffee, see you soon, God willing," scratched inside a greeting card from a mission she'd given money to, or on a quarter of a blue-lined sheet of loose leaf, and wrapped and edged on that another note, kisses and hugs marked in X's and O's. Each edge of card or sheet snugly taped, the envelope itself double sealed, especially the minuscule space between where the envelope's glue ends and no sealant lives. Now the notes addressed to my kids, and like Emily's command to the Bowles to write back, "Take your mother out for coffee. Buy something. God bless." Thank you.